Bonjour, Kiramagi and Ireland Indigenous Cast, and welcome to today's reading lesson. Today's episode, Analyzing Multiple Accounts, Day 1. We've all been there. Mom or dad, Nokomis, Mishomis, auntie or uncle, ask you and a cousin, you and a sibling, you and a friend, what happened? And there's always a different answer. Part of it is perspective. How you see things is not exactly how the person next to you sees the same things. And that's a product of background and prior knowledge and sometimes emotions. And then sometimes people just straight up lie. If you're an inspector, like Inspector Howard here, you have to find out what really happened and who's telling the truth. One event can have 3, 4, or 40 different accounts of what happened. So let's read the directions first. Inspector Howard is investigating a robbery at the local high school. He is questioning witnesses, but everyone has a different story. Read each witness's account, then answer the questions. If you note that we read the directions first, that is where you should always start. And we're answering the question of who's telling the truth. So we have 3 different perspectives here. And the first one is Jerry. When I came out of class, Erin's locker was wide open. I know it was Erin's locker because I meet her there every day after class. First, I noticed she wasn't there. Then I noticed her locker was open. I was going to shut it for her, but then I thought that maybe someone had broken into it, and I should tell a teacher instead. Jack, Erin's locker wasn't open when I got there. She was supposed to let me copy her notes from yesterday's history class because I was out sick. I waited by her locker for 5 minutes, but she didn't show up. I had a class, so I just took off. I never saw Erin's locker open. And then Mr. Michaels, presumably a teacher, when Jack popped his head back into the classroom and said Erin's locker was open, I didn't think much about it at first. The lockers don't always shut right. I thought that maybe she hadn't latched it all the way and it had just swung back open by itself. But when I took a closer look, I saw that the handle and the place where the lock goes were dented, and the lock was nowhere to be seen. I think someone broke off the lock and bent the whole mechanism so much that the locker won't stay shut anymore. So the first thing we're going to do is contrast Jerry and Jack's story. We want to see what's the same and what's different. But primarily, we're going to focus on the difference. First, Jerry says the locker is open. Jack says that he never saw the locker open. Jerry notes that Erin wasn't there, but never notes that Jack may have been standing there. So those are 2 key differences. Which one's telling the truth? Well, we're not really sure yet. In our own heads, we are probably already making assumptions about who's telling the truth, but that isn't always a safe bet either. Question 2, how does Mr. Michael's story differ from Jerry and Jack's? How is it the same? Well, it starts off with Jack announcing that it was not open, and that does coincide with what Jerry said. Suggests that it could be accurate. But we do notice from Mr. Michael's view that the locker is in fact open, because it says it won't stay shut anymore. As far as Jack's is going to be different completely, because Jack kind of states that he seems that the locker was never open. So we have 2 stories that have an open locker and one that doesn't. Now, a one person's point of view doesn't automatically disqualify it, but it would definitely make someone ask a few more questions. All right, and the second one today, the Great Cat Chase. Read each of the counts below, then answer the questions. First from Barry Beaver. It was a windy day, and the cap I was so proud of, and which I had been wearing constantly, flew off my head. The wind whipped it out over the river, where it tumbled this way and that. Quick, I shouted to my brother, Byron, to the boat. We sped as fast as we could, but the hat stayed just out of reach. Finally, we had to give up. I confess, I had to wipe a tear from my eyes. I saw my beloved hat drift off over the top of the forest and disappear. Byron Beaver. That cap had been on my nerve from the day that Barry found it. I think he looks so stupid wearing a cap. I mean, he's not a human, he's a beaver. But that cap made Barry think he was really cool, and he never took it off. So I have to confess that when the wind snatched it off his head, I snickered a bit. Finally, I thought, I won't have to look at that cap anymore. But then I saw how upset Barry was. When he asked me to help him, of course, I couldn't say no. So we jumped in the boat and went after it, even though, in my opinion, it was hopeless from the get go. So, how are Barry and Byron's accounts different, and how are they same? Well, they're the same in that both of them resulted in the hat going away and not being able to be found. Where they're different is in how they felt about the cap. Byron clearly didn't like it, and Barry clearly did. So, in all accounts, you can see multiple different versions, and you have to decide which one is accurate. For today, there will be no additional assignment. We will assess on this in our upcoming session. If you do have any questions, please reach out to me at miisland@sagchipschool.net. Have a minute, Gizigad. Meanwhile, Bumble P.